98,100. That's how many layoffs there's been this year so far, according to Time magazine. As for last year, nearly 160,000 according to the same report. If you break that down, that's 32,700 per month for this year and 13,333 per month for 2022. That's a 40% increase per month. We're only just in March, so this figure could change, but we're likely to see many more layoffs. We've seen them mainly from Google, Meta, Amazon, and other tech giants, but there's also been one that seemingly hasn't suffered from the same fate, and that distinction would go to Apple. Indeed, Apple hasn't announced any major layoffs within the last 6 months. CEO Tim Cook even took a 40% pay cut, garnering some goodwill from the public and addressing concerns that his salary was perhaps too high. The reasons can be many, but one that seems to always come up is that they simply didn't go on a hiring spree like many of the most companies out there. The pandemic was devastating to the economy, no doubt about that, but one industry that actually saw massive gains was tech. It makes sense. People are staying home, buying things online, switching to remote tech jobs, things like that. Record profits were being generated at that time, and they didn't stop. 2020 through 2021 saw so much growth and new wealth created that tech companies hired waves and waves and waves of new workers to further that growth. It seemed like a dream that would just never end. Quarter after quarter, revenue was up, profits were up, and new employees were happy to be on board. But like all good things, just has to come to an end. It's honestly hard to say the exact reason or even the exact timing, but last year saw major tech giants suffering from bloat and simply not generating the profits needed to sustain their newer, larger workforce. With the economy in a weird flux, with some economists saying recession, the sales and subscriptions and continuing customer base just wasn't there anymore. With the federal interest rate rising as well, ripple effects were being felt in every corner. Even B2B or business-to-business transactions took a hit, being unable to fund their operations. So what did the tech world do? They just laid a bunch of people off. Even though laying people off means the employer has to cover either unemployment or a severance package, this was still a better option than keeping their oversized new workforce on whatever salary or compensation they were still on. However, Apple never joined the hiring wave, either because their financial department didn't see this unlimited growth trend as lasting too long, or simply because they just didn't experience growth to the scale of other tech giants during this time. 2022's new hiring for Apple only reached a bit over 6% when you compare them to the previous year's size. Even going back as far as 2016, their hiring rate remained about the same. But Apple wasn't the only tech company to not seesaw the way others did. Let's take a look at some other companies that also had a similar fate. NVIDIA. NVIDIA, based in Santa Clara, California, produces computer chips for a range of applications such as video games, desktop computers, and crypto mining. In addition to these, the company has also made significant investments in artificial intelligence, aka AI. Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, co-founded the company. As the broader economy slowed, NVIDIA had frozen its hiring process over the summer. However, the company currently has over 1,000 open positions as per LinkedIn. Strong financial position. NVIDIA may have had a strong financial position going into the pandemic, which allowed them to weather the economic downturn without having to resort to massive layoffs. Diversified business portfolio. NVIDIA has a diversified business portfolio that includes gaming, data center, professional visualization, and automotive, among many others. This diversification may have helped them mitigate the impact of the pandemic on their business. Long-term focus. NVIDIA may have a long-term focus and may have prioritized retaining its talented employees even in the face of short-term challenges. This approach can help ensure that the company is well-positioned for future growth and success. Remote work capabilities. NVIDIA may have had the infrastructure in place to allow for remote work, which may have helped them to avoid having to lay off employees who could continue to work from home. Cloudflare. Cloudflare, a technology company that provides cybersecurity and content delivery services, was able to avoid layoffs during the pandemic through a combination of strategic planning and a strong financial position. Here are some of the key factors that contributed to Cloudflare's ability to avoid layoffs. Diversification of revenue streams. Cloudflare has a diversified range of products and services, including cybersecurity, content delivery, and domain name services. This diversification helped the company to withstand the impact of the pandemic on different sectors of the economy. Remote work. Cloudflare was already a remote-first company prior to the pandemic, which meant that it was well-positioned to adapt to this shift to remote work that many companies had to make. This also meant that the company did not have to incur the additional costs associated with transitioning to remote work. Strong financial position. Cloudflare was already a profitable company before the pandemic, and it continued to generate strong revenue growth during the pandemic as well. This financial stability enabled the company to avoid layoffs and even continue to hire a few new employees. Focus on long-term growth. Cloudflare's leadership team made a strategic decision to prioritize long-term growth over short-term cost-cutting measures. This meant that the company continued to invest in research and development as well as in hiring new employees even during the pandemic. All of these things made huge contributions to Cloudflare's well-being, but simply put, the biggest factor was that they just didn't hire so many people in the first place. CEO Matthew Prince even mentioned it himself in a recent interview with Business Insider, saying literally, if we hired at that pace, we'd be doing layoffs too. Hey, you don't need to lay someone off if you've never hired them in the first place. Block, the fintech giant started by Twitter's Jack Dorsey and Jim McKelvey, and also owner of Square, Tidal, and Cash App, managed to also avoid major pandemic layoffs. Interestingly, another one of Dorsey's creations, Twitter, went through an almost 50% layoff under new management with Elon Musk. So, what did Block do exactly? Here's a quick breakdown. Adapting to the new market conditions. The pandemic caused a significant shift in the event industry, with in-person events being canceled or postponed. Block was quick to adapt to the new market conditions and focused on providing virtual event solutions, which became increasingly in demand. Strong financial position. Block had raised a significant amount of capital before the pandemic, which helped to ensure the company's financial stability during the crisis. This allowed the company to continue to invest in research and development as well as in employee well-being. The company recognized the impact the pandemic was having on its employees and made efforts to prioritize morale. Block implemented a flexible work policy that allowed employees to work from home and provide additional resources to support their mental health. Streamlining operations. Block also made efforts to streamline its operations and reduce costs where possible, which helped to ensure that the company's financial stability and avoid layoffs. These steps might sound kind of simple or even generic, but companies that have provided mental health and well-being services for their employees have fared pretty well in times like this. The truth is, a happy and healthy employee is going to do far better than someone who is stressed. We're seeing that happen right before our eyes with Twitter, which seems to be going down a darker path, at least for now. Time will tell with that one. AMD versus Intel. For the last company, I want to take a look at one that's doing it right and one that seems to be having a lot of difficulties. Basically, by comparing and contrasting, we can see what AMD did right that Intel failed to do, which ended up with AMD having no major layoffs. These days, it's no secret that AMD is the favorite in the market, while Intel is struggling because it failed to execute on an advanced manufacturing process that AMD was able to master, namely Intel's inability to make CPUs on the 7nm node. Intel has been working to address decades-long management and organizational issues, hoping new CEO Bob Swan and new technologist Dion Weisler to its board. AMD, on the other hand, has had stable leadership for nearly a decade. The difference in focus is also critical. AMD struggled in the early 2000s when its board wanted to chase the tablet and smartphone markets, which were outside of their core competencies. Intel made a similar mistake later by partnering with Apple to challenge Qualcomm without having the necessary expertise in that area. These distractions from core competencies resulted in lost time and ultimately market share. Intel-based Macs are basically a dying breed after Apple created their own processors. Nvidia learned years ago to be careful with partnering with Apple, which overall is a brand that's been known to be a bit difficult to work with. They had a brief partnership when Nvidia provided graphics cards for Apple's computers, but this partnership would only be short-lived. Apple actually wound up replacing Nvidia with AMD for the graphics solution, and now it looks like Intel is on the chopping block too. Now, regarding massive layoffs, they are often not precise, and the collateral damage can far outweigh the benefits. Layoffs disrupt working groups and lowers employees' loyalty. Performance metrics often fail to capture the unique benefits that seemingly underperforming employees bring to a team. The layoffs can create fear among employees, leading them to seek more secure positions and impacting their overall performance. Intel's main problem wasn't their tech or ability to produce it, it was their poor management. When the management isn't helpful and employees live in constant fear for being let go, you're going to find them disinterested in working or innovating. Rather, they're going to be spending their time looking at their prospects and trying to figure out a better future for themselves. In my eyes, AMD played the slow and steady game. Sure, they made some mistakes and didn't always invest in the right areas, but they also ended up faring much better than their competitors with their steady management and focus on employees. And what followed? Incredibly innovative tech and major deals with other tech giants like Microsoft and Sony. So what have we learned today? The tech world is not immune to making mistakes, just like any other industry. What we saw during the pandemic growth was a mass of bravado and overconfidence in the never-ending growth wave. It quickly became obvious that this this wouldn't be here to stay, and companies would have to invest in resources to undo what they had literally just done. Let me know down in the comments below if you were part of any of these companies, whether it was the ones doing the layoffs or the ones who didn't. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting a fellow recruiter. Give us a like, subscribe, click that bell. It really means a lot. Feel free to also follow me at Preston_Park, as I try my best to also post behind the scenes content daily. Thank you so much again, and we'll see you on the next one.